situation over there at Denny's. Pretty much everybody's nice to me. But it doesn't take but one shitty person to fuck that up. One person who thinks that the rules, well, sure, they apply and they're meant to be followed, especially when it comes to customers. But if that customer is a hobo, then we need to change the rules, apparently, which is what's done. So, of course, Saturday, I spent in McDonald's, a good portion of it anyway. And of course, I did pay for my coffee. I bought 8 coffees in one day. That's because I was afraid of getting kicked out for working on my things, even if I was a customer. Well, one of the manager ladies, after the gentleman manager made mention, first thing Monday fucking morning, right? Like, I gotta make calls. I gotta have my computer in front of me to actually make some of these calls and to actually have the references in front of me when people ask for them, so I can send it to them immediately instead of having to find a place to plug in my computer, and then I gotta listen to the recording. That way I can remember exactly what it is that I was supposed to be looking up. Anyway, with the coffee thing, the other manager lady, when I went in, I was gonna buy another coffee, and she told me that if I buy a coffee, I get free refills for 2 hours. And I thought to myself, well, that didn't fly the other day. Monday morning, I just bought my coffee. It was like 7:14 a.m. when that guy with the spider tattooed on the top of his head was complaining to me about, well, basically moving in. You know, it would be nice if I could move into the McDonald's. It would be nice. Most of the people who work there are nice. They treat me very well. But as far as a customer who's come in and made a purchase, has purchased a coffee, is not spending the full 2 hours on that coffee, getting refills the whole time, getting 8 coffees just on Saturday, every one of them being an actual coffee, full price, not a refill. Sunday wasn't a lot different. Monday, I wasn't even there for a full hour when he wanted to come and do that stuff. Sure, he sort of talked nicely, but it's fucking dirty, the whole goddamn situation. Now, I get that it's not easy to get a job with face tattoos. But if you get a job as an assistant manager or as a manager with face tattoos and tattoos of spiders on your head, well, keep in mind that 20 years ago, that would have prevented you from getting the job to begin with in most places, including McDonald's. I get a lot of people who want to change the rules when it comes to me. Like, yeah, sure, you know, a customer is allowed to come in. They're allowed to sit down with their computer. They're allowed to plug it in. They're allowed to drink their coffee. And they're allowed to have 2 hours before having to buy another coffee. And there I was. Hadn't even been there a full hour. And the boss man was telling me, well, things that were, number one, untrue. It's not McDonald's policy. Just because you feel insulted by a homeless person existing doesn't mean that changing the rules and changing the policies so you can be a jerk is going to work. Except it does, doesn't it? with everybody else at McDonald's being nice to me. And one person who I have to be afraid is going to change the rules when I go in there, is going to treat me differently than the other people in there, is going to try to shove me or push me out the door, but not do so to the other people in there. Yeah, that does create a safety issue for me. It creates a safety issue for me going to get coffee or going to get something to eat, let alone even going into the store. The guy who's, well, obviously got some sort of a grudge against the homeless people. Since he's a manager, if he's working, I just eat out my vehicle and drink my coffee out in my vehicle and avoid the guy. But I gotta be somewhere. I have to fucking exist somewhere. When you change the laws to make it legal for you to do this to homeless people, you're not making it legal. You are changing the laws. If the laws are used for a pretty white girl in a house differently than they're used against a homeless male on the streets, we are showing how sexist, how racist, and how classist our goddamn society is. Now, I did stick up for the guy because he's kind of tattooed up, but he has one of them accents like a vato. If you guys have ever been to Northern California all the way to Southern Washington, you know what a vato is. White shirt, white cotton t-shirt, and then of course there's the khaki or tan shirt on top of that that's buttoned up only on the top. Common. Now, when you have that particular accent, that's a very specific and particular accent. It denotes that you're not exactly a Mexican, but it also denotes that you're, well, gang oriented. And his tattoos show gang orientation too. And I do give leeway that people can change and do change. I mean, take a look at me. I used to be one of the nicest people on the planet. Now I'm a douchebag. Don't fuck with me, don't fuck with my people. Now that guy, he's got kind of one of them accents like somebody who grew up with them gangsters. But if his journey, his voyage in life, if it makes it so that he, as someone who obviously has represented the gang life in the past, has it tattooed all over his head, if he can pass judgment on others, that just shows the disparity of the world that we live in. I don't have any intention of hurting the man. I don't have any intention of starting shit with him. When he was on the phone with that repairman and that repairman was talking down to him like he was retarded, I could tell he was getting frustrated. And I definitely made a mention about it. Like, why would you talk to the manager at McDonald's who's trying to get your electronics working? Why would you talk to him like he's retarded just because he's got a little bit of an accent? That lady in town here who's gonna try to advocate for me, she has a lot more understanding from my level of the situation. And that is helpful. She'll also be able to look at evidence and be able to understand what some of the other victims were going through, what was going through their heads at the time. A lot of them did stupid shit because they just didn't want to get in trouble. None of them were going to get in trouble. Not at the beginning, anyway. But the longer it went, the more felonies they committed. That's right, my friends wanted to commit felonies to try to hide their involvement. I could complain to McDonald's about the mistreatment, but it's only one person. And although it is a pain in the ass for me to try to avoid him, especially since I need to utilize the internet there, and I see other people plugging in their computers and being there for literally hours at a time. I see people who go in there very similar to Fred Meyers. They go in and one or two people will get something and the rest of them are just hanging out. But here's the thing, is that those individuals who are just hanging out aren't paying customers. So why are you going to let them sit without saying anything? But you're going to complain to a homeless person who's actually following the rules. I've always been real good at following the rules. What I'm not real good about is you constantly fucking changing them. Oh, you're a white guy, so you need to do this. People always want to send me to services, not realizing that these services are primarily just for them. Like women sending me to women's services and telling me, well, they're supposed to help out men. And then you get there and they give you the runaround. If you've ever walked in with a male and a female at two different occasions to try to turn this stuff in, you realize that the men have a lot bigger problem, a lot bigger issue being heard. They're a lot more likely to be blown off. They're a lot more likely to be lied to about services and what services will help them. Many of these women's services, they're still tagged and promoted as women's services. That's very scary to a male, because a lot of these services that we've been sent to that are for women only, that later on are supposed to be for all of us, but still have those women only names. They're primarily run by women. Women who have a bias against men. Men must be the predators. Men must be this. Men must be that. They will put so much work into helping a fucking junkie mom who lost her kids because she's a fucking junkie. Can't stay off the fucking drugs. Can't stop dating abusive assholes. But these services will help those women. Not caring that they're junkies. Only caring that they're women, and poor women, we need to feel sorry for women. Even if that woman did something wrong, it's okay to destroy her husband's life, or her ex-husband's life, or her boyfriend's life, or, of course, the father of her children's life, because she didn't get what she wanted. And these services will eat it up like fucking candy. So, of course, the rules are different if you have a vagina. The rules are different. If you're afraid of the cops as a woman, you've got a 4 out of 100 chance of being killed by a police officer. As a male, you have a 96 out of 100 chance of being killed by a police officer. 96% of those killed by police are male. Only 4% are female. Nearly all the men that I had to stay with told me about living with abusive women and about how they just had to take it. That ain't right. That ain't right to go into an establishment and pay your dues and then get treated like you're a freeloader who's only there to smoke drugs in their bathroom and crazy shit like that. See, that's the thing. that guy was getting treated like he was a stupid vato by the repairman he was talking to on the phone. And I definitely said something about it. I felt it was insulting. I felt that it was rude. The manager feller here at the McDonald's didn't deserve to take that, but also I didn't deserve to take it either. Now I have to be afraid if he's working that he's going to pull some screwy bullshit. I got to be afraid to even plug in my computer. Kind of like that lady over at the Denny's who wanted to complain that I was a customer at the Denny's. Yeah, I was living in 3 different parking lots. She wanted to pretend like I was just staying in the one and I was only parking specifically in Denny's specific parking spots. And fuck, lady, there are 3 different goddamn businesses attached to this fucking series of parking lots. There is no law that says that I have to be a Denny's customer and a Burger King customer and a McDonald's customer, all 3, in order to actually park in that parking lot. If you got 3 businesses that share a parking lot, they have to fucking share it. None of this, oh, well, Denny's doesn't want you here while you're a customer at Starbucks. You fucking kidding me? That's just nuts. Anyway, the feller here who talks like a vato, he doesn't lay it real thick. Although vato is kind of generic. That's how it's used today, is very generic. Any Hispanic, what do they call that? Hispanic criminal underworld. It's not just Mexican mafia, which is what a lot of people try to push. Man, it's the Mexican mafia, the Mexican mafia. Do you even know the name of the Mexican mafia? It's not a Mexican mafia. It's a drug cartel. Big difference. Big fucking difference. That's not to say that the mafia never sold drugs. We all know that's ignorance. But their primary purpose and job, it wasn't drugs. Matter of fact, we didn't really pay much attention to it until Prohibition. That was a long time ago. Prohibition was about alcohol, right? Al Capone, that was supposed to be mafia, wasn't he? Gangs of New York, gangs of Chicago, all these fucking gangs. I do agree with integrating people back into society especially after being imprisoned. I do agree with helping people to relocate, start a better life when they decide to get away from the gangs. A lot of those gangs tell you, you're in it for life. Only way you're leaving is in a box. So yeah, there is safety measures that need to be considered. When you decide that you're going to leave that lifestyle, you might be leaving a few corpses behind. When you're no longer associated with the people that you used to be associated with, but you were involved in a couple of killings with them, yeah, they don't want to risk the idea of you telling on them for killing somebody now that you had a change of heart, now that you're not hard anymore. But then, of course, you live that lifestyle. It's tough to get out of it. It's tough to not want to dominate somebody else. And that's what it all comes down to, is domination. People will dominate who they think they can get away with dominating. Much like China did with Korea or Vietnam. Russia did that with Vietnam too. Thought they were going to dominate. Well, here's the thing about the Vietnamese people. They accepted communist help, but that didn't make them communist. The Vietnamese people have never been communist. Isn't that strange? They never adopted it or adapted it. Even after Vietnam, after America went in there with a big old storm, they dropped more bombs in Vietnam. America dropped more bombs in Vietnam than they dropped in the entirety of World War II. And still, the Vietnamese, after the Vietnam War was over, showed that it was never about communism, it was about independence. Independence from the European nations. Something that Franklin Roosevelt fought hard for. He died before the war was ended, and unfortunately, the man who took over was an idiot. If it hadn't been for Franklin Delano Roosevelt dying before the war ended, well, much like Abraham Lincoln, if he hadn't died at the end of the Civil War, things would have been a lot different. The Jim Crow laws and segregation of the South and the way that it became. And of course, this is a lot of history all at once, ain't it? You wouldn't think that the loss of one good leader would make all that much difference. But because of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, we've had almost 24 wars that are fought against what should have been considered independent nations. Nations that belong to France, belong to England, or even belong to the United States. I'm going to end this video. I'm going to go in and have some coffee and warm up a little bit. Hopefully I'll not get bothered for having coffee. Hopefully I won't get treated like if I buy a coffee and I'm there for a full hour, even though the rules apparently say I'm allowed to be there for 2 hours. 2 hours. After 2 hours, I have to buy another coffee, but for that 2 hours, I can get a refill if I want. I don't have to buy a coffee every 10 minutes to make people happy. But then again, they don't care about McDonald's rules or policies. When it gets to a point like that, it's a matter of power and control. The cops don't care what McDonald's policy is. If somebody decides they're going to be a dick and want to push their power around, McDonald's policies aren't going to be what's followed. What's going to be followed is what the manager wants, because he's the manager. That's one thing is about a subservient environment. Yes, McDonald's has rules against being a douchebag like that, just like McDonald's has rules against being a douchebag like Jennifer. Just like Denny's has rules that make it so that you're not supposed to be a douchebag like that. I want to say her name is Wendy or something. It just comes down to one person with a position of power that thinks it's okay to be a douchebag. No matter how well I get along with everyone else. And that's the thing, is that once it becomes a safety issue like that, where somebody is trying to push their power, doesn't care what the rules are, doesn't care what the laws are, only cares about taking their shit out on somebody, who are they going to pick? You get into a fight with your husband and, well, the bills are in both your names. The house is in both your names. You and your husband have an issue. You don't want to be with your husband anymore, but you don't want to be homeless. So who do you take it out on? Somebody who's fucking homeless because you're frustrated. Very kind of you. It's very kind of you to be afraid of becoming one of us and then looking down your nose at us like we're some sort of horrible monsters who are out to take your cake. Let them eat cake. You can say that here in the United States. Over in Europe, though, they got a habit of chopping people's heads off for saying shit like that. And those of you who want to pretend like that's a threat, it's not. It's a statement of fact. Jesus said we're all going to die. He even went through a whole list of the people who are going to die. That's what let us know that everyone's going to die. Right? You want to push the Christian thing? The Bible says it, Bible says it, Bible says it. Well, what does the Bible say exactly? There's a lot of people who tell me that the Bible says we're supposed to kill homosexuals. I don't know how many times I've read the Bible, but I know that that part is not in the Bible. Not once in the Bible does it ever say to kill a homosexual. Not once. A lot of your hatred that you guys want to spread, it's your hatred. It's not the law. It's not the rules. It's your hatred. And you're making decisions based on your hatred and bias. Who you were taught to hate. Who you were taught to blame. Some of you were taught to blame Jews. Some of you were taught to blame blacks. Some of you were taught to blame Mexicans. Some of you were taught to blame immigrants. Some of you were taught to blame anybody with a fucking accent. But the thing is, an accent doesn't make you a bad person. Your life's decisions are what does that. I've done a lot of desperate things to try to protect people, especially my loved ones. But my loved ones aren't the only ones who exist. When it comes to a child being abused, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the protection of the child. If you've been my best friend of 20 fucking years and you abuse a child, I'm still gonna fucking tell on you. When it comes to the rules, people think the rules don't apply to them or only apply when they want them to. When they want to be lazy, it's okay. And the worst of all these people are people who work for the United States government. Because they have to work less and they get a lot more out of it. They get guarantees that the rest of us don't get. Meanwhile, even those guarantees aren't followed, are they? Let's take a look at the military. Let's take a look at how many people are having to fight hard to try to get their GI Bill. Why'd you offer them the GI Bill if you're not going to follow through? Why'd you tell people, oh, if you fight in the military, we'll pay you this and we'll pay you that. If you lose your leg, we'll guarantee you'll never end up homeless. 6 months after you get home, your wife left you because you're depressed and because you're missing a whole fucking leg. And it creeps her out. It's weird. Right? What are you going to end up doing? You're going to end up homeless. That's where you're going to end up. It's not usually 6 months after you get out of the service. Usually they'll give you a bunch of medical stuff for about 6.5 months, and then they cut you off. And that's at the point where you have to take a look and assess your situation and realize, all right, am I so broke and in such a screwed up situation? Sorry, I just stabbed myself in the leg with a paper clip, so I lost my train of thought. I should probably end this video anyway. It's coffee time. N5BCP.HJ.7L, or is that 7I? Girl Interrupted typed something on here. I can't tell what it is she typed though. All right. Well, Girl Interrupted, I'm sorry, I don't understand what your message is. Good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper or your sister's keeper, and no victim left behind.